Teaching new believers and non believers to obey everything that Jesus has commanded is a vital part of our mission. And as a missionary, it's easy to think Japanese people are known to be diligent people. So, learning how to live in obedience to God is quicker than other people groups. But the reality is quite the opposite. There is a huge barrier for Japanese people to understand what obedience to God really means. And unless you are aware of the barrier and teach them to overcome it, later you may find out that who you thought believed in Jesus actually did not commit their life to Christ at all. That is a tragedy. So in this video, let's find out what that barrier is and learn what needs to be taught to people here in Japan. Hello, I am Taka Tanaka, native Japanese campus minister in Japan. Today's video is about why teaching obedience in Japan requires contextualization. Usually, teaching obedience doesn't sound like an area that requires much contextualization. But that is not the case here in Japan. To understand why, let's begin with the very common concept in comparative religion known as monotheism and polytheism. As the word themselves indicate, monotheism means that religions that believe in one God, such as Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, whereas polytheism means religions that believe in multiple gods. And while the number of gods is the literal distinction of those two, there is an even more important difference. So, what is that important difference if it is not the number of gods? That is the underlying framework of each worldview. The framework of monotheism is that God makes promises to man and he keeps them. We trust that this God will keep his promises. And those promises are essentially made and executed by God based solely on his own will. So whether those promises are convenient for man or not is essentially irrelevant. How about polytheism? In polytheism, whether a god is convenient or not is absolutely everything. The polytheistic worldview is that God should exist for the world and God should be doing something helpful for man. Generally, polytheistic gods are defined by specific functions: a god of harvest, a god of fertility, or a god of safety. Basically, the idea is that humans have specific desires and people create or attach a god to each of those desires. Another way to put it would be there are as many gods as the number of human desires. For example, I once came across a video titled "Why the God of the Old Testament is Garbage." The video is apparently not on YouTube anymore, but it was basically about how God judges people. The video presented Yahweh as a bad God because he kept pouring out his judgment, which, in the video creator's eyes, wasn't an act of helping people at all. Here is the root of the misunderstanding. To those with a monotheistic worldview, God's judgment is understood as an expression of His holiness and how faithful He is to His promises. He promised it that way, and He has every right to determine to do things that way because He is God. But to those with a polytheistic worldview, where the very concept of divine promises and faithfulness doesn't even exist, this kind of God is simply a bad God. Now that we understand the difference between monotheism and polytheism, let's dive deeper into the uniquely Japanese view of religion. In short, Japanese people view religion as medicine, which means they believe every religion can be mixed and taken together to make it work best for them. In fact, a very influential 19th century philosopher, Sontoku Ninomiya, think of him as a Japanese Max Weber, made the following statement. Religion should be taken as medicine to prevent greed, anger, complaints, and other poisons. This religion as medicine approach can be observed throughout Japanese history. To see just how deep this runs, we have to look at how Japan historically imported foreign religions. Back in the 7th century, Prince Shotoku introduced Buddhism to a country that was entirely rooted in indigenous Shinto belief. But the mindset was, this is a medicine that seems to be good in developed countries. He didn't look at Buddhism as the absolute exclusive truth. He looked at it as a highly advanced prescription from abroad. He studied it diligently and even wrote a magnificent commentary on the Lotus Sutra. But here is the crucial part. He never abandoned Shintoism, and he never converted to Buddhism in the Western sense. He simply took this new medicine and added it to the shelf. 2 centuries later, in the 9th century, the Heian dynasty operated on the exact same blueprint. Emperor Kammu and a prominent monk named Saicho looked at the Tang dynasty, the superpower of the world at that time, and decided to import a new, sophisticated Buddhist doctrine called Tendai Shikan. Once again, the motivation wasn't personal surrender to a supreme god. They were simply looking for a fresh, more powerful medicine to protect the state. To administer this new prescription, they built Enryakuji Temple on Mount Hiei, establishing it as the supreme headquarters of Japanese Buddhism. Essentially, this wasn't a spiritual revival. It was a massive state-sponsored upgrade of their national medicine cabinet. By the 19th century, this pragmatic approach to religion became fully institutionalized in the Japanese psyche. Kamata Ryuo, a brilliant physician of the late Edo period, explicitly pointed out this placebo effect. He frankly stated, God is an empty existence, but believing it works, and that is all that matters. To him, the objective truth of God's existence was irrelevant. What mattered was the functional utility of the drug. If it gives you peace of mind, take it. His ideological mentor, Ishida Baigan, summarized this ultimate multivitamin mindset perfectly when he taught his disciples. Never give up on one thing, and never discard one thing. If it serves as a material for refining the mind, do not abandon Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, or Kokugaku. Do not be attached to any of them, but to utilize them all without prejudice. If I were to translate this Japanese concept into Western terms, I'd borrow the words of Chris Rock. In his stand-up routine about religion, he says, I'm trying to get my life together, man. I'm trying to get a little religion in my life. Just a little. Just a little. Religion is kind like salt. A sprinkle is good, but too much will F up the meal. Chris Rock nailed it. For many Japanese people, Jesus is just another sprinkle of salt to make their already existing life taste a bit better. He is a convenient medicine, not the Lord of their lives. But as long as they hold onto this medicine mindset, true obedience is impossible. Because the moment Jesus commands something inconvenient, they will simply stop taking that medicine and look for another prescription. So, how do we break this century-old cultural barrier? In our ministry here, we had to rethink the entire approach to discipling Japanese people. We realized that we couldn't just teach biblical rules. We had to confront the underlying worldview first. In the process of calling them to obedience, I tell them frankly, if you are looking for a guide to living peaceful, conflict-free life on this earth, you actually don't need the Bible. Japanese people are already genius at that without it. But the Bible is not for the earth specifications. It is for the kingdom specifications. And following Jesus will bring the holy conflicts with this world. By contrasting the Japanese concept of peace, which means the absolute absence of conflict, with the biblical concept of peace, which means victory in the midst of inner and outer conflict, we help them shift their entire paradigm. We move them from asking, how can God serve my life, to how can I surrender to His kingdom? If we want to see Japanese people truly commit their lives to Christ, we must address this worldview level first. It takes time and it requires patient and deep discipling to deconstruct centuries of this polytheistic mindset. But when a Japanese person truly understands that God does not exist for them, but they exist for God, that is when true, unbreakable obedience begins. I want to ask the viewers, have you ever experienced this medicine mindset in your own ministry? How do you tackle it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and learn from your experiences. Starting from the next video, I would like to do the walkthrough of how I actually share the gospel with the people here. In other words, what contextualized evangelism look like in practice. Thank you for watching. I am Taka Tanaka, and I'll see you in the next video.